Hello and welcome back to the Weekend Spread. I'm your host, Bobby Howard, and with me today we've got Boat and Blake. And Blake, the past couple of weeks have been filled with realignment, talking about who's going to be in the Power Five, who's going to which mega conference, who's making the most amount of TV money. So, this is really the perfect time to take a step back and focus on something that you and I hold dear to our hearts, and that is Group of Five football. Let's go. I'm excited to go in, preview some of the overlooked, probably underappreciated teams in college football. I know this isn't everyone's cup of tea. Not everyone, really cares about what's going on in the Mountain West or the MAC. But you and I, we have a fondness for the crumbs, and I want you to explain to the people, someone who might be listening to this for the first time, why you love the Group of Five and why you love this level of college football.
The reason why I'll always love this section of college football and why it's so important is kind of we're seeing it right now. There's so many football people being kind of like boo hoo, the sport's over, the regionality is dead. Where are these traditions? But they're not looking at five other conferences that exist within the FBS that, for the most part, are very much like regional. The Sun Belt kind of occupying the South, the MAC occupying the Midwest, the Mountain West occupying the entire kind of like Pacific West, Northwest, even Hawaii's expanding out of the continental USA. I love it because they have that regionality aspect, but also the resources are kind of similar. Like, really, the standard deviation on a year to year, top to bottom, is really not that much. Like, you're rarely going to see a team that has a stranglehold on one of these conferences that can just outspend, out recruit, out NIL somebody, because really, if you're good at those things, you've probably already moved up somehow. There's been enough realignment now, besides maybe like a Boise State, that you're stuck in this area, but that's a good area to be in because it leads to exciting conference play. It leads to good conference titles, and the conference titles actually mattering to these teams, and not just some kind of like, oh, it could be a launching point to the college football playoff.
Right, and we talk a lot about how so much of it, especially ESPN's coverage, is about who gets in, who's in the Final Four, and there is a bit of there's too much talk about the playoff, so it's nice to be in the space of the Group of Five. I know it's ironic because one of our talking points is, can somebody challenge for the playoff, but it's nice being in a space where like conference championships matter. The race, the game you're like that's going on in itself matters, and making a bowl matters. I mean, you could point to, was it the Northern Illinois game last year? I can't remember who they were playing, but it was basically for a trip to the Bahamas Bowl, and they're all celebrating on the field for like clinching third place in the MAC because it meant they got to go to the Bahamas. That is like pure college football. It's beautiful, and that's just what I love about the Group of Five.
Yep, it like they actually care about the bowl games. Like, I know there's a whole group of people out there. It's like, why should we get rid of the bowl games? A lot of these group of five teams really care about it. One, they get extra practice, which is essential for a team that's like you're not going to bring in a lot of recruits. So to get those freshmen, get those sophomores, redshirt freshmen more time to develop. But also they just enjoy them. Like, it's their one time a year where they have a national stage that they can put on a show. And that's why I'll always love it. Like, I hope whatever model we go to, if conferences start departing from the NCAA, we need some sort of league or something that contains a lot of these teams, just because they still provide compelling football, but you're just not talking about like how it in the media context, bringing in the big numbers, bringing in the college football playoff dollars at the end of the year. But that's what's so wholesome and great about these conferences.
Yeah, and it just they just are unchanged by what's going on around them. Like, I feel like nuclear war could happen, and then 100 years later, you still have the MAC, playing in a destroyed Detroit because they need to get the Quick Lane Bowl in. You know what I mean? That's how steady these conferences are. There's something to really be to really admire about it. But let's kind of get into it. So, major news with the G5 is three pretty solid, pretty big programs have left the American, which I think we all agree has been pretty much the best Group of Five conference. They had pitched for years that they're a part of a Power Six, but you have UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston all getting promoted to the Power Five, which is kind of more like a Power Four now. And I want to know which program that remains of the Sun Belt, American, Mountain West, MAC, and then the Conference USA. Which do you think is most poised to establish themselves as kind of like the new king of the Group of Five?
Yeah, so this one is actually a pretty tricky question because, like, on paper, you're gonna say the American. Like, the American, although there's been a lot of entrants and exits, they still do have a really solid conference. Like, the teams that they added were all good, like, good to great at times, G5 schools. So you add in a UTSA, you add in a North Texas who's pretty good, and some of the others, like, they're gonna be pretty stable, but the thing is they're just not very exciting, nor could some of these other teams could be on the move. Like SMU today is already in the news that they could possibly leave, and they're kind of like the cream of the crop of the American right now. There's only like really 3 or 4 desirable teams that are like really fantastic. If you're going for health, and I think one that we've been circling for a while and has been rising up, it's the Sun Belt. The Sun Belt, I think, between Appalachian State having continued success, with having Grayson McCall and the Chanticleers of Coastal Carolina still being a great program even after Jamie Chadwell left, and then some of the other programs like your USA, South Alabama, your Troy, your Louisiana Lafayette, always really good. They don't have that elite team per se in that conference, but they have a nice spread with, I think that also matters, fan bases that truly still care about their teams for that conference to mean something, even if it doesn't have like the Cincinnati, the U of H, the UCF, like those types of teams that were really always contending with the big dogs in the P5.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we're talking about conferences, like which one's better, it's like I think it genuinely is kind of neck and neck between the Sun Belt and the American. And I think people are going to start waking up to that because one thing the Sun Belt has that the American definitely doesn't have is regionality. They have expanded within their footprint, have a really solid, understood regional identity, and I think that's something that is a massive advantage, and being in that area is something that's so big for recruiting because yeah, you're not going to go head to head with the Alabamas and the Georgias and the Ole Misses, but there's still really good players in the South, and pitching to them that look, you can stay in this area, you know, all of your family and friends can travel throughout the area, and you can make these games. You're not going to have to hop on an airplane over to, you know, halfway across the country to go, you know, follow your kids, which is I think a massive boost. So I think long-term projection, I think Sun Belt probably a better conference. I think it's going to take a couple years to get there. I mean, especially this year. You know, I don't think there's anyone really that stands out to me because, as you mentioned, with Jamie Chadwell leaving Coastal Carolina, App State's a little bit down. Um, Louisiana still hasn't recovered from Billy Napier leaving, but I think there's a lot of meat there, and we're not even talking about James Madison, who's great but can't play in the postseason.
Yeah,
So they're
it's
going to have a star come out of there. The American is probably on top for now. Love UTSA, love Tulane. I think those two, like, I could see Tulane being a bit of a powerhouse after that big Cotton Bowl win with Michael Pratt and all that. But we'll just kind of have to see. I'm kind of fading the American, you know, long term.
Yeah, because it's like the American is a very top heavy league. Like when I look at it this year and I'm projecting like, oh, who do I see in the American championship game? It's gonna be one of 3 teams. It's gonna be Tulane, it's gonna be UTSA, or it's gonna be SMU. It's gonna be some form of combination of that. And although that's like those 3 teams can build very successful teams to like rival some of those like Power 5 ones, it's not ever going to have the same luster, especially once the Sun Belt starts recruiting a little bit better. Once the Sun Belt, I think one of their biggest benefits is like the southern part of the United States, obviously a recruiting hotbed. They might not win those recruiting battles up front, but the transfer portal, we're seeing more and more players that have like said they're from Georgia and they go out to California and try their luck and it just doesn't work out. They're not seeing playing time. Typically, they're going to do the opposite and go closer to home, something that their parents can actually see and hopefully try to see the field. That's what I think, like, if we saw last year with New Mexico State, like a very random team to make a bowl, but they're not going to be like elite level talents ever at New Mexico State. But they were able to take a whole bunch of New Mexico guys that went off to Power Five programs, just kind of flamed out, put them together on a team, and made like a pretty decent team for a program that has basically been like 1 or 2 wins every single year. So I think the Sun Belt in the long term is going to benefit from that. Even if they can't get that elite team, kind of like how we would see a UTSA, a Tulane, and SMU, especially in SMU, because they're just throwing so much money at that program that most G5 schools can't. I think it's just the standard deviation that league's going to be so low from top to bottom that it's going to be the more interesting television product.
Yeah, yeah. No, I would agree with that. And I think the thing that the American has is large markets, but I think they're just not together. And they obviously were dealt a pretty massive blow with losing those 3 teams in the Big 12. And I think there's a part that you kind of have to wonder, like, I don't know what the future of expansion looks like, but I know they're trying to knock down the door and get in. And it seems to me that the American doesn't really care about regionality. I think from a football standpoint, Sunbelt just kind of makes sense in terms of making better programs, making teams that go a little bit further. But and I gotta say, I think if we're talking about a team that could be in that UCF Houston uh, type of tier, I kind of think Tulane could get there. I think Tulane it obviously had success, but I don't know. I think they're just not on that same par as some of those, UCF teams like 2017 that, made a couple runs, or like Houston at their peak, or Cincinnati when they actually made the college football playoff. I don't think they're a legitimate contender this year.
Yeah, like
I think
my
that's like
problem.
pretty much
So
it.
yeah. Okay. Like I'll say my problem with Tulane is this. Tulane last year had a really experienced team. I think last year going into the season, they had 16 returning starters, like something ridiculous. And then they had all the success. They had good quarterback play out of Michael Pratt. And then this year, again, they're going to have 13 returning starters, Michael Pratt back. So I think they're going to be good in the short term. It just like, I get a little weary. It's not like one of those where it's like UCF that was really like sustaining themselves over multiple quarterbacks and coaches. And like, although in a short period of time, it seemed like a lot of like turbulence, it just worries me that like Tulane's kind of in their golden age and then could just drop everybody next year and go back to being just like 6-6 and not good, not bad, but just not being able to replicate any of the success that we've seen this year and possibly last year.
Yeah, like long term, I would be concerned about that. Can they go back and redo it? But I mean, we'll see. I want to ask, like, do you think there are any other teams? Like, I think Tulane's probably the
Yep.
name that people would think about sneaking in the back door for the college football playoff bid. Do you think there would is any other team in the group of 5 that you think could make a run?
I think the other team in their conference that I'm really high on, that I can only see as like the other team to make that run, maybe not college football playoff, but I think definitely that contender for the New Year's Six spot for the G5 is UTSA. UTSA jumping up into a new conference. I It is a jump, yes, but I don't think it's like that much of a quality jump that you should be worried about like somebody jumping from like G5 to P5, how you see like the Cincinnati's of the world now jumping to the Big 12. I'm just not as concerned with it. And they come back with the super experienced squad. Like we know Frank Harris. Frank Harris is like our age, I feel like at this point. He's like a super duper senior and somehow keeps finding eligibility to stay there. I think he's probably the best quarterback in the American. I think Jeff Traylor is probably the best coach. They bring back a lot of experience at wide receiver. I know they lost that one wide receiver to Ole Miss, their top guy, but they were still, it was a really deep room and one of the other better rooms like in the conference already. And really their schedule is not all too difficult. You got I like the only game you really got on there is at Tulane. And like that would decide basically your fate of whether you're gonna make the championship game or not. But if you look at the conference standings right now, it's like plus 200 for Tulane, 225 for SMU, and like plus 475 for UTSA. UTSA is the same quality as those three teams. They might have to go on the road to Tulane, and they don't play SMU. So it's like really you're coming down to that one game. But with that value and that experience, I love UTSA in this conference. I just think if like Tulane just kind of takes that dip, like that it could happen just after the dream season dip. Like I think UTSA is right there. But also to your point, Bobby, I know you said for the college football playoff, the problem is like the three teams that I could see making it are the three top teams of the American. They all play really hard people that will immediately give them a loss. It's like Tulane is going to Ole Miss that they could possibly lose to. UTSA is going to Tennessee, and then SMU is going to OU and TCU. So it's not like they have an easy schedule to get that easy 12-0 and put the pressure on the CFP committee. They'll actually have to beat somebody in order to make their CFP dreams happen.
I will say that Ole Miss Tulane game is in New Orleans.
That's what I forgot. It's in New Orleans. Yeah, New Orleans. Sorry.
Old Yulman Stadium. I don't know. I think that'll be a pretty heavy Ole Miss crowd. As OU fans can attest to, there are a lot of dual season ticket holders, people who bought Tulane season tickets because that was the only way to get into the OU game. So they just like half of Tulane season ticket holders were just OU fans trying to go to New Orleans. But yeah, no, I'm sure it'll be a pretty pro Ole Miss crowd, but we'll see how that goes. I think the Rebels are pretty damn good, and I if I had to pick that game today, I'd go with Ole Miss. But that's a kind of one of those fun games where you might sprinkle a little bit on the straight up upset. But I will say with UTSA, you have at Houston. Our opinions of Houston may vary. I think that's a game they could win.
Yep.
At Tennessee, I think they lose to the Vols, but if you're making a college football playoff run, you kind of need some upsets. You kind of need some spice to like give you a little bit of a push. If they somehow found a way to shock the world and win those two games, or win in Neyland, I'm just saying, like who knows on that. So I would, if I had to pick one, I'd go with UTSA, or like probably UTSA in terms of like just kind of the spice factor of possibly beating a Tennessee. But that's about it. So do we want to kind of go into some of our favorite conference bets, or what do you think, Blake?
Yeah, sure. We can go down that road.
Yeah, so let's do it. So let's start out with the Sun Belt. I think personally that's my favorite. And we're not going to do this for every single one of them because let's be honest, some of our thoughts on the MAC and the Conference USA, maybe we don't need three bets for these, but I want to know what's your favorite over under for the Sun Belt in terms of win totals.
So, in terms of totals, I think Appalachian State over. I'm still high on them, and I know if you look at the conference like totals, it's pretty bleak in terms of Appalachian State standards. Like usually, typically they're the first or the second best in the conference, and this year you're going to see unfamiliar names at the top, Troy in USA. But I just think this. I think they're always built to win games. They're so loaded. They're like they're the dream team of the Sun Belt. Solid offense. I think they got great quarterback play, high potential that we saw beating Texas A&M last year on the road. I think their schedule really, if you're looking at it, not too horrible. They get Coastal Carolina off their bye, and I know Coastal Carolina is off of it as well, but I'm looking at the schedule and not seeing too many losses. They play North Carolina, their toughest non-conference game. I think they could beat North Carolina. They were damn close to it last year. And so I just feel like every single game they're competitive in. I'm gonna go Appalachian State Mountaineers over. I feel like it's been a winner every single year. So what are you thinking, Bobby?
I do love myself some Yosef, but I think the way they performed last year kind of made me kind of dissuaded me because I thought they would be really good, kind of let me down a little bit, and I think that's pulling me away from going with them as my main over. I I like the James Madison Dukes here. They have a bit of a spicy schedule, but I think it's doable. They do have to go to UVA, but I mean, I think that's a very winnable game. The Cavaliers are not very good. I think it's a little bit concerning that they have to play at Troy and then they have to play at Coastal to end the season. But this James Madison team last year, what like they should have won the Sun Belt, but they were like kind of held back by the by the NCAA, not eligible for postseason play for last year or this year, which is just incredibly annoying. But to me, I think 8, like getting over 8 feels like a solid, like a very solid, very realistic possibility for me for JMU. I think they do it. But value is not great. I just think the Dukes I think they just keep on rolling, keep on winning, and continue that momentum from that first stellar year in the Power Five, or sorry, in D1, the FBS. Still same
Yeah.
thing. We know what we mean.
And this is the only, really the only bet you can take when it comes to futures with James Madison because they can't compete at their conference title. So if you feel high on them, this is the only bet you could possibly take to get that feeling in with some cash.
Yeah, for sure. Any thoughts on unders? Because I'm going to be honest, I'm kind of fading Coastal a little bit. Losing Jamie Chadwell, I think, is a lot bigger than people think. I obviously kind of the head of that program really started things. You still keep Grayson McCall, but to me, I could see them taking a dip and Coastal under 7.5 at plus 105. I don't mind that. I think that's not that bad.
I like it to a degree, but my thing is, it's like when I'm going through this and I'm like, Jamie Chadwell loss, how much is that going to affect one season? I think losing Jamie Chadwell over 5-6 years is going to be massive for Coastal. But when they still have Grayson McCall and looking at who's probably the biggest factor when it comes to a point spread game to game, if Chadwell's not coaching versus McCall not playing, McCall is swinging that point spread so much more. So it does worry me a little bit. I don't really like their coach. It's the old OC from North Carolina State. I don't think he's a very good game plan, and I just like game planner. And I thought Coastal Carolina was so fun because they kind of put the triple option a little bit on their head and made it fun and vertical passing and really fast paced. I enjoyed that, and I feel like they're going to a really boring, slow offense like NC State always is. So I'm not all the way on the under there, but I see the reasoning why. But I'm gonna go familiar team on this pod. The Texas State Boco Bobcats. I think
No.
I think this team is just gonna be so bad. They really last year it was what did they have? Almost zero recruits, no transfers. They can't bring anybody into that program. They got some transfers this year. Their quarterback room is loaded, I guess. It's loaded with names, It's Malik Hornsby, the old Arkansas guy, and then it's what's his name from Auburn? TJ Finley that started for them a little bit. Yeah, they have a deep quarterback room, but besides that, I'm so out on them. Their schedule is so hard. They're playing in their non-conference. They could beat Nevada and Jackson State, so that worries me a little bit because the number's saying at 4.5. But they play Baylor and they play UTSA. They're not beating those teams. And then when you look at their in-conference schedule, I think the worst team that they play is maybe ULM. But yeah, they have to play Troy. They have to play South Alabama, and those games are at home, which is bad if you're a bad team. If you're getting all your hard games, hard games at home, that means your easy games are on the road when they can beat you. So I just don't if you're going to tell me this team, I think it's at 4.5 right now, this team could win 5 games. No way. They won 4 games last year with, I think, maybe a little better coach, or I don't know if it's better coaching staff, but it's just, there's no talent on this roster to get them 5 wins. There's no way I see them winning 3 conference games.
It's a hellish schedule. I'm with you on that under. I mean, getting Baylor, UTSA, even Jackson State, who is D2, still probably has some Dion left over there. I don't feel good about that. Obviously, getting Troy, Coastal, South Alabama, like, man, I'm pretty out on Boca this year. Um, just not a very good program right now. Like you said, they got a lot of scraps from the portal. Like they they got a ton of like Alex Grinch's OU defensive commits or recruits who that didn't pan out at OU and just kind of got shipped off to San Marcos. So I don't know. They're kind of like an island of misfit toys like type of vibe right now going on with Texas State. So I feel good about that under two.
It's just, yeah, it's gonna be grim, and maybe they start building something. Like, we talk about we talk about how bad they are and how they can never recruit, but they're still in the state of Texas, and if you get a coaching staff there, you're in a good conference that has some juice, and I think winnable games if you could just develop the roster a little bit more. Like, I think it's almost there, but it's just if you clearly cannot get talent like the others in the Sun Belt, they'll bury you because every team seems to do good at seems to do well besides maybe your ULMs.
Yeah. And that's the thing is they're basically Texas Tech, but in a really cool spot. They have a river.
Yeah.
Yeah. San Marcos is great. That's a really good place to hang out. I remember chatting with Ty, who's on the show, of course, back freshman year. He's like, you know what? I think I want to transfer to Texas State, just hang out, not actually have to do any work, maybe float the river a couple times. And he never did that, of course. But it sounded like a pretty convincing idea. So I don't know. Texas State definitely deserves better. I thought the Spavital era would have gone much better than it did. It was a total disaster. But anyways, let's move on to the American a little bit. Or actually, no. Let's talk about our favorite champion for the Sun Belt. What are you thinking, Blake?
I'm gonna go with USA, University of South Alabama. I think the East of, or what would that be? The West Division this year in Sun Belt, the championship runs to them. They have to go, I believe, on the road to Troy, which is going to be a difficult game. But their defense is just so solid. This team is just one of those teams that's been on the rise, and Troy, I felt lost enough in the offseason. So I'm going with USA. I think they're circle some of those games. I know they're playing, I believe they play OSU. They play OSU. And Tulane. I think they're competitive in one of those games. I just really like them. I think they're a solidly built team. And I just think maybe Tulane, they're looking at that Ole Miss game the next week, not paying attention to a really solid G5 team.
Yeah, I have Troy on this, and I think to me it's basically a coin flip between Troy and USA, but the difference, in my opinion, is Troy hosts that game. They have that game on Thursday. They host James Madison as well, I think that home schedule is kind of favorable to them. They really the only game I would be afraid of, conference wise, is the Georgia State. The Georgia State trip could be spicy. Georgia State's trip teams up.
But I feel like Georgia State's always tripping teams up in every sport. They just randomly pose themselves as a roadblock.
Yeah, they just pop up and they almost beat. I think they almost beat UNC last year. They gave UNC kind of a tough go.
Didn't they almost beat Tennessee too, or did they? No, they did.
Did they? Oh, I know they got close. If they didn't actually do it.
I know because that was I think it was the last year of Jeremy Pruitt, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. No, they did. They totally did. 2019.
Yep.
They beat them 38-30. First game of the year. So yeah, Georgia State, they're tricky. That would be tricky to me, but I think to me it's a coin flip between those two schools. Troy's performance last year was just incredible after losing that Ole Miss game. Just going on a pretty impressive run. And I know they did lose a lot, but I feel like they're building something very solid in that university, and we'll see how it goes. But I think South Alabama, very, very good choice as well.
Yeah, it comes down to favorable schedule versus probably favorable roster, what they're bringing back, and I love those. That's what makes these conferences the most fun, because you circle one game and you're this is the conference could come easily down to this, but then also random roadblocks always appear, and like right when you think you win that game, the next week you go on the road to like Georgia Southern, and it like completely derails your season after you got over the biggest hurdle. So
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it can all be thrown off by just saying like, oh, you have to go to Appalachian State on a Tuesday. Game over. You're losing that one. There's no chance. You know what I mean? So, let's move on to the American a little bit. So,
let's do it.
do you like what over unders do you like?
Yeah, so
Win totals.
big over, like one of my biggest overs of the year. And I hate to say this, SMU. It has to be SMU. You can find this number. It's been floating around. It started at 7.5. Most places I think you can find it at 8.5, 9 with maybe a little bit more juice to the over. But this schedule is so favorable to them. Like I know you get probably 2 auto losses with OU at TCU right off the bat. So you're coming into conference play 2-2. But Jesus, their schedule is so easy. It's like if Preston Stone, these wide receivers that all transferred in, like all these like heavy transfers that they've been throwing the NIL bag, like any of those players end up being somewhat decent, they're going to run through the rest of their conference schedule. They don't play UTSA. They don't play Tulane. Their hardest game that they have to play is Memphis, and it's Memphis on the road, but like that's the only game I really see them tripping up. I don't think Navy's that good this year. I don't think Temple's that good. I don't think Tulsa, Charlotte, Rice, like they have like 4 or 5 of the bottom American teams that they play in the schedule. Like this one, like even if it's heavy juiced on the 8.5, I'm still taking over because I don't think they lose 2 with this conference slate. It's just really that bad. And like even if Preston Stone gets hurt, I still think they're like still beating these teams just because I just don't know where I find the losses unless something weird and fluky happens, which can sometimes happen with SMU. But I feel like Rhett Lashley is building a competent program. Is it a Power 5 program there? No, because you need to actually start stringing together some consistent results. But I can't see more than 3 losses on the schedule. So that one's one of my big heavy hitters. Like it's one of the auto bets ones that I saw even when they posted at like 8, 8.5, even 9. Like I would take the chance of the push.
Yeah, because I think to me, SMU obviously that brutal schedule with OU and TCU. As an OU guy, I'm a little bit. I don't want to say I'm nervous about SMU, but I know like we have to show up for that. We have to really respect SMU because they are a solid team. And if you mess around and don't come prepared, they can make it a game or possibly beat you. So I'll say that as an OU fan, a little bit concerned. But yeah, that schedule is pretty pretty easy. A little bit of concern for like at Eastern Carolina on a Thursday, like some weirdness could happen, but to lose 3 games, I don't see it. I don't see it. So especially in that conference, like that's I think a really really solid over. I'm kind of fully with you on that.
it,
Um,
you have to be feeling nervous as if you're an SMU fan. For the first time, I think in decades, you have actual expectations to win 10 games. You should definitely have that expectation just because that schedule is so easy. And if you don't get that, if you get below 9 wins, then you should actually be mad at your program. Like you finally have the voice and the ability to be mad at them just because you out talent most of the teams that are on your schedule. Like
yeah,
you just have significantly better talent.
absolutely. That there should be that degree of expectation, especially as you're trying to get into the ACC or wherever the hell they're trying to end up. Yeah, they should expect that. I will say, and maybe this might be just a bit of an emotion pick, but I'm gonna go Charlotte over 3, mainly because of how mad their coach was about only getting asked like one question or like basically no questions. I don't know. I don't know how to feel about the Charlotte 49ers as a football team, but look, you have South Carolina State. That should be a win, you would hope. And then, maybe a little bit of chaos along the way. They could probably pull something off, I would hope. You get Rice at home, FAU at home. I not who knows on Tom Herman. I don't know actually. I don't know. I'm kind of at the point where I'm just trusting them to cause enough chaos after beating Rice and South Carolina State to get one more for a push.
I feel you got to do that. Like Biff Poggi, I love that man. He like his backstory is so weird. He used to be an investment manager for the longest time, and then just got bored and decided to start coaching football, and then somehow ended up in the Michigan program, and then is now a head coach like at a FPS level school, and like he was independently successful beyond football, and then just decided to like do this as a side quest. So I love the fact that like he's fired up, like he has like you could. The good thing is it's like I feel like he can rally the boys for at least one game. Like, even if they are absolutely dreadful, if you are doing this just because you like football that much, and like you could easily find a better paying job than the head coach of the Charlotte 49ers, I think he's going to fire up the boys to at least one to push, if not two. I have that feeling. Like, he has to be smart. Like, he has to be smart somehow. Like, he has to be emotional, smart, everything. I think he rallies them at least one.
Yeah, I think they can. I think they can get it done, man. I'm telling you. Just he got that energy. I didn't know he used to be an investment manager. That's hilarious. He just had a midlife crisis. You know, some people get a motorcycle. This guy decided to coach FBS college football. It's
Football.
incredible. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I wish I could like kind of fail upwards like that. That would be nice. Just even in my even in my worst time, still get a dream job.
I don't even know if he was failing upwards. It sounded like he was doing great. He just ended
Like,
up here somehow.
and what a story. But yeah, I'm all in favor of that one. It'd be a fun one to root for.
Absolutely. Any unders you like?
I do, and this one's gonna hurt you, Bobby, because you are a season ticket holder this year. But
Just
under
a mini pack.
Tulsa,
Just a mini pack.
oh, sorry, mini pack. We're a mini pack holder, so you're slightly less offended. I think it's Tulsa.
I'm only like
Tulsa
one
under
third
four and a
offended.
half. It's I think this Tulsa, like Phil Montgomery did, I think one of the best jobs you could ever do at Tulsa, just putting them in a place where they made the American championship. Like that's really good for I think it might be the smallest or second smallest like FBS school currently. Like Tulsa is tiny. Davis Brin, their quarterback that was kind of keeping them afloat last year, he did great, got injured in the Ole Miss game, which they like surprisingly kind of like stuck around in a little bit. But he ends up transferring, so he's gone. So they're without a head coach that I think is pretty good. They're without their starting quarterback, which was the only thing kind of keeping them afloat. I just think there's no talent left on this roster. Like I think it's gonna be a really, really, really dark year. And then when you look at their non-conference schedule, you maybe have a guaranteed one win with Arkansas Pine Bluff. I think at NIU is going to be a game. Like they're always feisty in the MAC, and then Washington and OU is just going to be blowouts. And just even looking at the schedule, you're playing SMU, you're playing Tulane, you have two of the three juggernauts, and yeah, I just don't see the wins. I do not see how you can get to 5 wins with this. It's going to be probably more closer to 3, possibly even 2. I just think this Tulsa team is going to bottom out this year.
Yeah, I mean, it pains me to see my one third Golden Hurricane, be in that position. But I'm not big on them. I don't think quite. They're just not that good. They're in a bad position with the schedule. That being said, in addition to the OU Tulsa game, I am going to try to go to the Battle of the Titans between Tulsa and Rice on Thursday, October 19th, because I have a mini pack, and that's the only other game I want to attend. It's a thirsty Thursday, so I'm just saying, if you're a program that has a series of thirsty Thursday games where you can do more than just one, that's kind of a sign of where you're at. And I know that's mostly the American, but also, man, that sucks. So I'm kind of with you on the Tulsa under there.
Smart strategy by then, though. I will give them this. Like any G5 school, whenever it's close to a university in your state that's really passionate, always block it out with some sort of season ticket or ticket plan. The fans will buy them, and that's just free money in your pocket. Like those weren't really going anywhere. If you like Tulsa football this much, you've already secured your season tickets before that mini plan came out. Like this isn't taking tickets away from anybody. If not, it makes it easier. If you are a Tulsa fan, can't go to many games, you're just buying those tickets for cheap on StubHub from those OU fans that are trying to just like get a little bit of their investment back, if anything. It's like it's the perfect strategy. It really is. It's like an easy influx of a few $1,000s into your athletic department.
Well, it's genius too because they're not selling single game tickets for OU
Yeah,
Tulsa. Like you can only buy
smart.
it through the mini plan, which is great.
That's smart. And
I love
they
it.
just made themselves like a whole bunch of money because those mini plans are probably going to sell out by the time that OU game rolls around.
Oh yeah, the $55 ones already have. So now you're stuck with like $100 mini plan. So there you go. Love to see that for the Golden Hurricane. Do we want to talk about your thoughts on an American champion? Who do you like? And it can be a bit of a value play. It could be a overall play. What do you think?
I kind of mentioned it earlier. Overall play, value play, it's UTSA plus 475 that I'm finding at like the book I use. 475 for a team that could easily be just as good as the other top two. And I know they have to go on the road to Tulane, and that could hamper them and could end it right then and there. But just the chance to overcome that, and then if they were playing like an SMU, they could easily go at SMU. I just think UTSA, too experienced, have the best quarterback in the American. I think it's just easy value and could easily like actually win.
Yeah, I mean the value is incredible there. And I think that's my value pick. I just can't shake Tulane though. I think they have a good thing going, and this is kind of a last hurrah for Pratt and everything they have going on for this era. So I'm gonna give the edge to Tulane, but if I'm picking one for value for fun, love UTSA and the Roadrunners there as well.
I would never do it, but SMU, like honestly, could be a good hedge opportunity. They're gonna be on the other side of that game because they don't play the other two schools. They're like if you like believe in SMU enough to kind of run their schedule, they are going to be there, and then you could decide what you want to do from there. But it's just like you could tell it's like their odds got steamed with all those new transfers, and then once people kind of woke up, like the fact that their win total opened at 7.5, are you kidding me? You think they're going to lose 5 games on that dreadful schedule? Like absolutely not. So I just, yeah, if you want a good little hedge opportunity and somebody that you're like I at least have a chance, because like Tulane or UTSA, when they play each other, is going to knock out the other one. And like it could be done there. If you just want like a little bit of longevity, maybe you go that route.
Yeah, go with the alternate route because I mean this is a conference where weird stuff can happen in the championship game. It's not always chalk. So yeah, no, I think SMU would be a pretty fun weird value bet, but definitely not for a TCU Horned Frog. You don't want to be rooting for them. So totally get that. Let's move on to the Mountain West. Interesting conference to say the least. I feel like the past couple of years it's been essentially Fresno State and Boise going back and forth. But this is a conference that you love, you hold near and dear to your heart. You have teams you love, you have teams you passionately hate. So I would like to ask you, what's your favorite win total in this?
Yeah, so this my little monologue before I get into my win totals. This is the conference that really gets my juices going. I love the Sun Belt and I respect it. I think it's great. The problem with the Sun Belt is they play their games too damn early. They're playing them during the middle of the week, and then whenever they're being played on Saturday, they're at 11 o'clock versus games that I'm probably watching, whether it be TCU or other ones. The Mountain West is perfect. They occupy that late night slot on Saturday. They occupy that late night slot on Friday. You get to see majority of their games, and like that's really important to me. Whenever the nighttime comes rolling around, I'm usually not watching. I'm watching the primetime games, but I got my eye on something else, and that is Mountain West football. And I'm a huge fan. Like I'm wearing a Wyoming shirt right now. Love them. And then shout out to my roommate this year for my birthday. Got me little mini helmets of every single Mountain West team, and they sit on the front of my desk. I was getting worried there when the Mountain West was looking to merge with the Pac-12. I was like, oh damn it! Like, God damn it! I just have the full set. But yes, I have every single Mountain West helmet on my desk. I love this conference. I love this conference. I hate some teams in this conference, but I also love a lot of teams in this conference. So, gosh, where do I begin? Favorite win totals. First one, I'll give two right now for my favorites. My absolute favorite, no homerism, no nothing. Colorado State. Colorado State right now is 4.5. It's pretty heavily juiced to the over. I'm not gonna lie, but I am I'm considering just laying the juice and going for it. I think Jay Norvell's going to take the next step with this team. They have a great quarterback that last year, I believe he was a redshirt freshman, transferred in. He completed over 70% of his passes. I think set the record in the conference for highest completion percentage for a freshman. And he was doing this behind a line that stunk. They did not have, like Jay Norvell was joking the other day at Mountain West Media Days, that last year the line came up to his chin and he's only about 6 feet tall. Like, they were a bad offensive line. But they got key transfers there. They got experience there. They bring in new, I believe, a wide receiver from North Dakota State. Already had a decent wide receiver room. 2 new tight ends. I think a better defense. And I love, like, the Mountain West, like, I love it, but some of the offenses are pretty sluggish, and Colorado State's going to be different. And as we saw with some of those Nevada teams with Jay Norvell's there, he likes to speed it up, those Carson Strong teams. And really, with some of the worser talent, like a Nevada is not going to bring in your best talent of the Mountain West Conference. He can bring in better talent now at Colorado State and run that deadly offense. So 4.5, looking at that schedule, I think like looking at their non-con, like that was like what's most impressive to me. I see 2 wins there with Middle Tennessee and Utah State, but Colorado and Washington State are definitely winnable for a program that can play this like high tempo offense. I think Washington State's good, but they're beatable. And then I think Colorado is very overhyped. I know it's at Colorado, but if there's going to be a game that these guys get fired up for, that's it. And that's only the non-conference, and I'm already probably penciling in 2 wins there, so I just have to get 2 more. I don't think Utah State's very good this year. That's on the road. Boise State, they probably lose. Maybe UNLV, but they play like, I don't think Nevada's very good. I don't think Hawaii's very good. And then they're just going to have the random game where they just win like every other Mountain West team that like beat somebody that's significantly better than them. Like, I'm seeing 5, maybe even 6 wins in a bowl game here. I love this Colorado State one. Like, it might, I was doing the math last night, and I'm waiting for just to see some of the numbers around there before I lock it in. But we're talking like probably my biggest win total bet of all time. Like, I'm ready to
Wow.
go all in on this Colorado State team this year. Like, I was a Jay Norvell believer in Nevada. I think he's going to take that to Colorado State, and really had like that good form of turnover. Last year they're playing with like 50, 60 scholarship players because of the transfer portal. Now they're up to a full 80, 90 like you should be. I just think they take a huge step this year. So I'm not missing out on that.
I'm about it because I think Washington State, in Fort Collins, that's a bit spicy. That's winnable. I think anyone can really beat Colorado. That's kind of a toss up as well. So, getting Utah Tech, who, sure, uh, formerly known as, I think, Dixie State, which has
Yep,
never made
Dixie
any sense.
State.
Never, what?
They're not in
Why?
the South.
No. And it's Ag Day, so they're not going to lose on Ag Day because they're wearing the orange that day, um, which is always weird to see Colorado State break those out. But yeah, no, I'm about it. I like that. I like that over a bit. I will say I only have one for win totals, and you're gonna be pissed because it's I got UNLV under 6. I'm fa-
No,
I'm,
no, that was gonna be my other over. So this is perfect.
I'm
Let's
fading
fight
the
this bad boy
Rebels.
out.
I'm fading them. I just I've gone through and sweated through too many UNLV over unders, and I'm kind of out on them this year. Um, I don't. I think partially, frankly, some of it's out of spite. I will go ahead and say that. But you have a kind of tough schedule. You have to go to the big house. You're hosting Vanderbilt, who I know the jokes about Vandy, but they bit some teams in the SEC last year. I think they beat UTEP, Hawaii at home, and then okay, maybe not. I don't know. I
No,
don't
okay,
know. I'm kind of fading UNLV though overall though because I think at Air Force you lose that one. I think you lose to Wyoming because they're agent of chaos, and at Fresno always tricky. And as we just spoke about, Colorado State on the up. What are you thinking?
yeah, I'm leaning over on the Rebels. I think try to find it at a 5.5. I know it exists, so you got to get 6 wins in the bowl game, but I see the path. I think Barry Odom is a tremendous hire for them, a program that has struggled offensively, but done better on the offensive side than the defensive side. But what they bring with Barry Odom and his staff, they're going to go to a good coverage. Like, I think they're like rushing 3, dropping 8 type of thing. So a good coverage. Teams are not going to be able to pass on them. And then they're going to implement a more air raid, fast tempo, really slinging it around pace, which I think is good because I think UNLV's stocked with athletes. I love Ricky White, wide receiver, former Michigan State guy. He's dynamic. But really, like what this comes down to, and I'm gonna bet it over. I'm a man of the desert. They're my favorite Mountain West team. I want to see it happen. It's been a while in the desert when it comes to bowl games. Haven't seen one of those in over a decade, but it all comes down to Doug Brumfeld. Doug Brumfeld, they've transferred in so many damn quarterbacks like against this guy, and he beats him out every single time. He's dynamic with his legs. He's a good passer. The problem is he has ankles of glass, which is very problematic if you're a dual threat quarterback. And he's basically what decides this win total. I want to be the optimistic. I want to be the guy he's going to be playing all 12 games this entire year, not sitting out. We see the best version of UNLV, and I think with that, similar to Colorado State, I like those high flying offenses in the Mountain West. I think I think it's a huge benefit considering how like kind of slow and physical some of these teams can be to counteract them with that. But yeah, it comes down to Doug Brumfeld. I just want to be the optimistic one. I'm hitting the over. I want to see that bowl game. We were so close last year, and that was with Doug Brumfeld being out a good amount of time, still 5-7. So I can see improvement here. So I'm going 6-6. We go bowling.
There you go. There you go. Who do you have as a champ?
Champ, are we gonna do unders? Because I do have a really big under.
Yeah, no, go ahead and do some unders. Go for some unders.
Okay, just obligatory San Diego City University. That's just a homer one. They're going to be bad this year. Like, everybody considers them super physical, dominating on the lines of scrimmage, and that's why they do well in Mountain West play. But they've lost some key. They lost their all Mountain West center, all Mountain West right tackle. They're losing some up front on the line, and they're starting a converted safety as their quarterback. I know he did well last year, but I think it was the novelty weirdness factor of it. Put this guy, we got some game film on him. The conference, like, just because we're a small conference doesn't mean we don't have TVs. We could pop in that game film from last year. We're going to scheme for him. I don't see it. You get that mobility factor, but when you're starting a safety, this guy's not going to be slinging it whenever we have 6, 7, 8 months to prep for a San Diego City University. I just see it. No way, shape, or form. I do not see them hitting their win total whatsoever. I see them taking a huge dip, maybe even missing a bowl this year. So I feel very confident about that. The other win total, let me look it up because it is sad. I believe it might be 2.5. But it's Hawaii. Hawaii, the love of most gamblers. They're the ones who play the latest games on island. It's fantastic experience. It's the one saving grace on a day when you've lost everything that you feel like you can win it back. Now under the Timmy Chang era, the famous Timmy Chang, former Hawaii quarterback, I think they're bad. Like, I think they're like bad. Like, they've not been able to, in a transfer portal era, keep anybody, nor can they bring anybody to the island. This team, they won 3 games last year. I don't think they get much better. I don't think they get much worse, but I see one win on this schedule. I see one win that I know for sure I could pencil in Albany, and I don't even think that one's a pencil in because I think Albany's a pretty feisty FCS team.
But they gotta come from so far, like going from Albany, New York, all the way out to the islands.
And that is concerning, but that's like the one win I'm really giving them. And it's really a simple thing. It's like, for me, it's Hawaii. Although they didn't really lose anybody this year, they didn't really gain anybody this year. In the Mountain West, I think the other 2 teams that kind of occupy with them at the bottom, it's going to be your Nevada and your New Mexico. Your Nevada and New Mexico, they are still like projected to be just as bad as they were last year, but they transferred in a whole bunch of people to at least give them some help. Like, you could see that development on the roster that you're just not seeing at Hawaii anymore. I don't think Timmy Chang's a very good coach. Like, I think last year in like fourth down situations, red zone situations. He's like one of the worst statistically, like in America, with a tough schedule. Like always Hawaii, the thing you have to worry about is the travel. And I think you do play Nevada and you do play New Mexico, but you play both of those on the road. Those are your two wins that you could possibly have. And you're setting this at 3.5. I'm going way under. Like I just don't see how this team wins 4 games when all your like meat and your easiness on the schedule is all on the road.
Yeah, it's brutal. It is absolutely brutal. And I will say, like, I don't want to put too much blame on Timmy Chang because a lot of this is
Yep.
everything that happened with Todd Graham. Total disaster. I mean, in just 2 years, completely ruined
Right.
the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. So that's a hard thing to recover from. But yeah, no, just really not good. Schedule sets up horribly. I'm not optimistic about Hawaii at all, and it sucks because Hawaii deserves better. I mean, in the past couple years, they've been playing at a basically an elevated track or essentially a high school field. You know, they don't have Aloha Stadium anymore. Um, Everything's just a disaster for the Island Boys, and it breaks my heart because they deserve better. They're a cool school. They're always fun to root for, but at some point you have to be realistic, and
Yeah.
they're just not a good program at all. They're completely floundering.
And I don't know, like, you're not gonna fire Timmy Chang because like the expectations there are so low, but like what's Nick Rolovich up to these days? Like before he left to Washington State, like 2018, 2019, 8-6, 10-5. Like they used to be like it's not distant memory that they were a pretty live dog. Like, and it's just ever since those Todd Graham years, like if you want to know how bad Tom Graham was at Hawaii, his son transferred away. His son hit the transfer portal before his dad was fired. That is how bad Todd Graham was a coach at Hawaii. It's just
Disaster.
everybody's getting better around them, and they didn't bring in any new assistant coaches, didn't implement any new offense. They just kind of stayed the same as last year, and you just can't be doing that as a program. And so even if they get to 3-10 like they did last year, still hits the under. And I don't even think they're going to hit that.
Yeah. And not only that, but it's hard to recruit when you're like, hey, this is our stadium. It's basically worse than your high school was. So I
Yep.
hope you like it. You know, please come to the island. You know, it's tricky. You gotta really kind of focus on the brand and hope to get a stadium sorted out that actually befits a program like Hawaii. But we'll see how that goes. Okay, now we'll get to the kind of champion talk. What do you think?
Yeah. I think boring pick, and I wouldn't actually bet this, but I think Boise State's going to run this conference this year. They just have significantly better talent. Last year they started off really rocky. If people remember, they started off 2-2 with a loss at UTEP, which is just not acceptable for Boise State. They fire their offensive coordinator, bench their quarterback Hank Bachmeier that had been there for a while, and their season immediately turned around. Their quarterback. Their quarterback this year, Taylon Green, the Air Force, I think the Air Force coach called him the next Vince Young in their conference. That's wild. That's some wild talk. And I'm like, that is just not even comparable just because it's like a guy with slight athleticism in the Mountain West. Like, doesn't mean you're Vince Young, but they have they're good at every position. They have a fantastic quarterback. They have a schedule where it's like even looking at like their non-conference, like I don't think they beat Washington, but I think they're competitive with Washington. I think they're competitive against UCF. Like they're that like when I'm saying things like that for a Mountain West school, they're like pretty dang good. I think their conference, like if you look, or actually it's not conference anymore. They removed the conferences in the Mountain West, but I just think they are a class above the next. So boring pick, I would go Boise, but that means you got to go digging for value. Like you're not going for Air Force here or like one of the other like high ranked teams. I'm taking like 11-1, 12-1. I'm seeing on Wyoming, the team that I'm repping. Uh, they started out last year. They got absolutely gutted in the portal beforehand. Like their entire team almost transferred away. Still finished 7-6. The bully, the guy up there, he knows how to coach a defense. He knows how to get a physical team, a very well disciplined team, which he didn't have last year. But you started to see it come into fold at the end of last year and still make a bowl game, which is fantastic considering the state of that Wyoming program. Like I know for a while we were fading them so hard on the weekend spread, and they kept burning us because they were
Right.
starting to perform. Like they started out the year so like with such a bad roster that we were all like slamming them, and they still ended up being good. So you know they have that high floor, and if some of these like they get decent offensive play and can just like hold down up in Laramie, Wyoming, I like their chances just because they're a well coached team that always seems to get the best results out of their guys and take that leap. And their coach seems very confident in that this year. So I'm gonna go Wyoming as my long shot.
My only problem with Wyoming is the rule with Wyoming is you never bet on them or against them because they always burn you one way or another,
Yeah.
and they're just so damn inconsistent. And even like even though they seem like an easy mark, they're literally the meme where the old guy goes, oh, I'll call an ambulance, but not for me. Like that's what they do every time you think they're down, but every time you think they're gonna win, they just fall apart.
They are definitely volatility at its max, but it's like if they were ever to put it together, it'd be a good time this year to do it. And I think it's just like once you drop down from Boise State, I think the standard deviation, like I know, like a lot of teams or like a lot of people have like North Air Force projected as the second team, but it's like I don't feel super confident in Air Force. Like Air Force is one of those teams that it's like they I think won me my win total last year, but they're very high floor, not very high ceiling. It's like the triple option, even with a little bit of a vertical passing attack, just they've played Air Force enough, like they can game plan a little bit against it. So they're never going to blow out teams. They're always going to keep teams kind of close, and that's just not good for I think their ceiling. And then obviously I've talked about how I don't think San Diego City that ceiling's there anymore. So you're kind of
Yeah.
looking for that next one that's going to be in at least in the game.
Yeah, and yeah, I think that's fair. And I mean, talking about Air Force too, that's a team that lost to Wyoming, and I lost my ass on that one because I was real big on Air Force. I was riding with you on that one. If I had to go with a champion, I'm kind of trending towards Fresno State. I know they don't have Jake Hayner anymore, but I feel like we always get Fresno State Boise championship matchups in the Mountain West. And every time it's at Boise on the blue turf, and somehow Fresno State wins. It doesn't matter. Like they could have played, and like last year, Boise beat Fresno by 20. And then somehow Fresno plays the exact same game, exact same place, and beats them on the blue. So for me, it's like Fresno just feels like at plus 380, feels like a solid, just that's pretty good value for a team that wins a lot of Mountain West titles.
Yeah, it's just like you're throwing a shot in the dark with that. It's like, and the number reflects it. It's like if it's a typical Fresno State team, their number's a lot slimmer. But it's just like, what do you do without a guy like Jake Hayner that for 2 years put that program on his back, and like good players that have now graduated that stayed back with Hayner for his final season? It's one of those. It's like it could easily work out fine, but then we could also be like, oh, they're only 7-5. Like that makes sense. Like they don't have Jake Hayner anymore.
Yeah.
Like it's just one of those where the certainty is not there enough for me that I just like I don't want to take that shot.
I would agree. I would agree. Cool. Let's move on to the Mac. And you and I, well, I don't think we have a lot of feelings about the Mac, but also the Mac doesn't have any feelings for anybody. This is honestly the ultimate shot in the dark conference every single freaking year. So I'm just gonna ask you your favorite bets overall, win to conference, win totals, over under, whatever you want. What's your favorite bet from the Mac or couple of bets?
I love this conference. I love to watch it. Hate to bet it. I do not do the one thing I do not do. I do not do any win totals for this conference. I do not do anything that could possibly that I have to guess on a week to week basis when I put that schedule out in front of me. It's like, okay, who's gonna win this game? Because the games are basically coin flips. It's like I don't care how bad you are in the MAC, you're still gonna like you still have a chance to win every single game, and you'll win some in the fluky ways. So my strategy typically I just choose a conference team, put some money on them. It's worked for me the last 2 years. I've gotten two in the actual final. I've never been able to convert on one yet. I go for the big odds. So I'm gonna knock out Eastern Michigan, Buffalo, Miami, Ohio, and Toledo because they're more than or less than 1,000. I'm feeling good about Akron. You know, the Zips. The Zips hired, I think it was a Joe Musgrove, the uh where did he was he at? Oh, I think he was at Oregon and then came here. I think good coach. This is really just a shot in the dark. I have no idea. Like, that's the best part about Mac. I'm just gonna go with him. I like to see heavy odds. So when you get to that championship game, you can do something with it. So I'm just gonna go Akron, feel it out. But don't bet win totals. Don't bet win totals for this
No,
conference.
no, never. Feeling the Zips. I'm gonna go with Eastern Michigan. I know they're only at plus 800, but I feel like they're a reliable bet that I wouldn't say reliable. Nothing's reliable in this conference, but I feel like EMU always like has a gritty team, very solid, and plus 800 feels about right to get to the championship, win it. I like it. I like it. But really, you're
Yep,
kind of going into
I can't, like, what can I say? Like, I can't go in hard on you being like, how dare you, Emu, you fool! Didn't you oversee their quarterback battle? Like, no, it's like nobody knows really much about these teams. Like, I know there's some people that like track this religiously, but it truly is. It's like reading the tea leaves when trying to figure out what the hell is going to happen in this conference, because it's never the odds-on favorite that wins it. Like, do not just don't do that. But yep, I'm gonna go. To or Akron. Sorry,
it's
Toledo's the
honestly
other one.
like the one you can eliminate is whoever is supposed to win it. Like that.
Yes, like, because they can never string together that many wins. Like, you get everybody's best effort, and you end up somehow with like 3 or 4 losses in
Exactly.
conference. So
Exactly. Okay, let's move on to the Conference USA. Again, best bets. Who do you like?
best bets. This conference is small this year. Like, it's small.
Got nuked.
Not got nuked, and they're adding some teams. I know they're adding. Is it Jacksonville State? Yes,
Yep.
Jacksonville State, and then Sam Houston.
Right.
Uh,
Right. Yeah, you're correct. Which again,
so
making the jump from FCS.
yes, so I think they'll be good in a few years. If we're gonna go,
Oh, they're
who
also
I think
adding
is
Liberty, aren't they?
yes, they added Liberty. Yeah, sorry about that. I forget that Liberty was independent for the longest time because they always played like the CUSA type teams. So I just like assumed they're in one of those conferences. But I'm gonna go. So who's gonna win? It's Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky is so much better than everybody else in this conference. They can pass the ball like no other. Every Western Kentucky team that you imagine from your youth, ones that are slinging it for 400, 500 yards a game, it's going to be one of those. And I think they're just significantly better than everybody else. But if I'm going to have to go bargain bin, I'm going UTEP. I think Dana Dimmel has built a solid program there. Like UTEP, similar to like New Mexico State in this conference, used to be a doormat, like an absolute doormat of a program where teams were constantly running over them. They would go winless, 1-win type seasons, like even the FCS teams they'd play, give them a trouble time. I just think he's built such a solid program there, a good foundation that I feel like now Minor Nation can come to fruition. And I don't even know what this does this conference have a championship game? I think so. I think it's big enough to still do that. But so give me UTEP if they're there. I like what Dana Dimmel has done out in the desert.
Austin Reed out of Western Kentucky. He came back. I know he entered the portal at one
Yeah,
point. He's back for
back.
the tops. Man, and that's my thing is I love the Hilltoppers. I almost said I love Toppy, but I do I love Toppy, but you know what I mean by that. I love the Hilltoppers. Love Western Kentucky. I'm kind of if I'm going with value, I don't, and I hate Liberty, and I don't want to pick them, but I kind of have to pick them. So I'm gonna go Liberty plus 240 to win the conference championship. I think that they've overachieved for what they have, and they keep winning, and it sucks, and it's not a great thing. But plus 240, I feel like not bad odds. I think it'll be them and Western Kentucky in that final, and with the conferences like Conference USA, you never know what's going to happen. We've seen this before. I'm pretty sure last year was UTSA and Western Kentucky in the final. It was nuts.
Yep. Yeah.
So we know how crazy this conference can get. So I'm gonna go with Liberty reluctantly, but I kind of like that number. Get a little bit more juice than Western Kentucky. So yeah, I'm gonna go with the whatever they're called. I don't know.
Liberty is starting to give me the vibes of like a more corrupt UCF. It's like kind of comes out of nowhere and is pumping a lot of money into their program for like I guess like the size of what their athletics used to be, and then like will somehow like become like evil BYU once like in 10 years, like whenever realignment happens again. Like I just it seems it's becoming like they're gonna probably outspend most besides maybe Western Kentucky. They're gonna outspend everybody in this conference, and like if Jamie Chadwell is just as good as he's in Coastal Carolina as he is here, they're gonna suffocate teams, and that's gonna be really sad. But
it sucks. And it sucks because Chadwell was such a cool story under Coastal. And they had to join these just corrupt, just a gross program.
So, because I was waiting for him to go to like NC State or like a Virginia or like one of the Carolina, like a clear step up where it's like, oh, that's great for him. Like he went to like a Power 5 job because of like what he could get out of like a smaller program that can't recruit a lot of talent and stuff like that. And then it's just like, like you kind of like went to a worse conference, but lateral to a team that will like pay you a lot more. Like that's the thing. It's like he didn't like lateral, like he didn't get a promotion per se. He just got a lot more money, and that just kind of sucks. Like, I wanted to see that arc. I wanted to see that arc so different. Yeah. I wanted to see that arc so much more different. I was like, I'm ready. Like NC State's kind of getting boring. Like they need like a little like they need the mullet. They need that like Jamie Chadwell vibe there, and he's just at Liberty where like you like vibes aren't allowed. They're illegal and you get fined for them on campus. So
it's against the campus rule book to have any vibes. Yeah,
so
sucks. It just sucks. But all right, that's all we really have for the Power Five, or sorry, Group of Five. Any final thoughts, Blake, before we close this thing up?
No, I just think watch the G5 this year. If you're yearning for that regionality, just come join us. They're at the best times. They're usually late Saturday night. Time when you're not watching games.
I apologize. I tried to put the background music in. It completely screwed your audio. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. But no, I'm with you. Like it's really fun. It's like a proper, honest, cool version of college football. It has that regionality. It's great. Always fun to watch, and I feel like they've been expanding it on the weeks. So always something to watch during the week. So absolutely love checking on the Group of Five and their conferences. So anyways, so again, sorry for cutting you off there. I didn't know to do that.
It is all good. It's just it's always so like funny when you'll have a like App State Coastal Carolina, the biggest game of like the Sun Belt Conference, and it's on a Wednesday night. Like that's what's perfect about it. Is like this league doesn't take much more effort to follow. Like these leagues don't take much more effort to follow just because they give you the perfect time slot where it's like you're not going to be watching anything else.
Yeah, because they know it's going to be nuts. You know, if they're throwing it down, you know, at App State, that always is a crazy environment. And I think we get a Coastal at App State on like a Tuesday, and you know that's just the best environment. The best environment. Apparently, nobody likes going to App State, which honestly, as a TV viewer, I love. So, anyways, well, Blake, thank you so much for your time as always. And I cannot wait to dive into some Group of Five action. Getting right to it on week 0. So super excited to get to that. Thank y'all so much for watching, for listening, and we will be back at it with some weekend spread picks coming very, very soon. And I can't wait to actually get into the grind. I tell you what, Blake.
I'm ready for it. Oh, dude, I am so ready. I love the weekend spread, and I know we're gonna have a legendary year again this year. So,
yeah, it's gonna be an all-timer. I tell you that. So, for me and Blake, this has been the weekend spread Group of Five preview. We'll see you next time. Have a great one, and good luck out there.